As Debbie said, my name is Ernan Roman, president of ERDM, and what our company does is conducts deep, qualitative voice of customer research to help understand what the friction points, the points where companies are breaking glass with customer experience, and then understand the strategies that need to be built to improve retention, repeat, exploration, customer experience, et cetera. So that's what our company does, and I'll be using the data from all this work to inform some of the recommendations and findings for you. And I have the pleasure of being joined by a brilliant digital innovator. And when I asked Paul to join me, I also did not know he was an amazing football player, just like our prior speaker. So, Paul, tell me about your background.
In case there's any confusion, common issue. I've had to put a circle around this on the intro page. Any of you in the back, I'm not the guy on the right. Ernan had a very great description of what he does for a living. I'm a donut salesman. Really, when we boil it down to, I'm a coffee and donut salesman. But tremendous amount of fun, great brand to work for, great brand to have the luxury of working with, especially when you grow up in the region and in the backyard. Anytime there's a coffee made wrong anywhere by someone who is Irish Catholic in and around the Boston area, I get a text. So it's really great because it keeps you very honest about voice of customer, and prior being somebody from a digital background coming to a brand that is in hospitality and restaurant, very eye-opening experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those learnings.
So some of the things that Paul and I want to talk about. So first, I'm going to share learnings from the VOC research with these three particular points. So number one, the chasm that exists between the fantasy that we all have about how wonderful we are, what's really happened with the customer. Point number two, the unprecedented expectations, and we'll talk about why, and the magnitude of unmet. And then number three, 7 points that I hope you'll take away from an action planning point of view, 7 points that have come out of the research in terms of where engagement is valuable, desired, and appropriate. Paul?
Yeah, and then from my side, we'll kind of share a little bit about our experiences launching digital at Duncan, which is only about 6 years old now. It's been a transformational experience, and increasingly we've had to keep going to the customers to find the right way and to make sure that we get our bearings to deliver the right products and services, which, again, coming into hospitality and having access to a tremendous amount of data information and usability, sometimes you just have to go talk to the guest, and you'll see several examples where we've had to do that in our path.
So wanted to start off with a question. In a retail information's info system study, executives, peers like us, were asked, who does personalization best? What do you think was the top ranked answer? Say again. Amazon? Starbucks? That's it? The world's that flat? Okay, so amazing. The top ranked answer by peers like us? No one. Okay, top ranked answer, no one. So with that as an honest framework, want to talk about a couple things. So the data that I'll be sharing is based on tens of thousands of hours of hour-long qualitative one-to-one interviews that our firm has conducted for the brands that you see here. So you see B2B brands, B2C brands, luxury brands, et cetera. So that's the data set for the findings that I'll be sharing. First finding that I want to share, some really important sort of universal truths about customer experience. So again, these are B2B brands and B2C brands. Number two, really important, these findings, these quotes, aren't about the person next to you, because God forbid my customers wouldn't say that. They are about your customers. So please think about these findings, given such a huge data set and how smart these brands are. Your customers are probably feeling this way. So point number one, the chasm, the magnitude of chasm that exists between the fantasy that we have about how far we've come, how well we're doing, how wonderful it is, versus the harsh reality that our customers are experiencing. Basically, they're feeling, we call it CX and one-to-one and all the other BS. It's the same old spray and pray, batch and blast that they've been used to forever. So it has not changed. The chasm is getting bigger and bigger. Point number two, the expectations of millennials, of Zs and others is higher than ever before because they know how much data we're capturing when they access us on this or on laptop, desktop, etc. So particularly those generations know how much data is being captured, which only fuels the frustration that says, so why aren't you using that data to personalize the experience? So highest expectation levels, frustration because we're not using data that they know we have to deliver on personalized value is causing huge frustration. Point number 3, and something that Paul and I have been talking about as we worked on this presentation, in spite of all the privacy issues, the Facebook data breach, etc., look at this term, reciprocity of value. All generations, B2B, B2C segmentation, are looking and willing to share much more data with us in the service of our providing a significantly improved customer experience. So the issue is they'll overlook privacy concerns if reciprocity is there in how we pay them back for sharing the jewels, the B2B or the personal information. Final point, blinding glimpse of the obvious and yet profound. Customers are people. They want to be treated as people. How many folks here are B2B? Marketers. Okay, how many are B2C? And the rest that didn't raise your hand, did I miss a category? So the B2B or the B2C is not a helpful categorization. It's just blocking us. Urge you, based on these research findings, discard B2B, discard B2C, just think P2P. We are in the business of person-to-person communication, value, authenticity, engagement. That's the only way we're going to improve CX. So some findings relative articulation, so you hear the verbatims in terms of where this gap is that Paul and I will be addressing. So look at what's being said here. Simplistic, history-based emails don't work. With today's technology, again, the millennials disease, I expect emails to reflect my individual interests and preferences. This one is, how many of you are using cohorts and personas for your marketing? Mistake. We are complex human beings with individual needs. It is insulting when we get, quote, personalization, which reduces us to cartoon characters. We are not simple cohorts. We are complex human beings. Think about that in terms of the implications of that, particularly on folks who are using traditional personas. Number 3, this is profound. True engagement forges a grace account. Think how beautiful that is. A grace account upon which to draw when there is the inevitable problem or the inevitable outreach from competition. So from all the data, I wanted to pull 3 sort of uber statements to frame what Paul and I are going to be talking about. So part of what has emerged are 7 points in the life cycle. These are very specific and actionable where B2B and B2C customers want engagement. Step number 1 is purchase and onboarding. So Paul and I are going to talk to you about that. Purchase. Start the relationship by learning about us as individuals. Be proactive in asking for appropriate data, and then use that to improve the experience. Onboarding. How many folks have a formal onboarding strategy? It's one of the highest ROI things you can be doing. Welcome me, make me feel appreciated, then make sure I understand what I need to know to get the greatest value from the product that I just purchased. Don't take my money and run.
Yeah, so on that same note, talking a little bit about some of our experiences, when we launched loyalty back in 2013, we had this huge wave of enrollment. When I left, I was at Staples prior to coming to Duncan, working a number of years in loyalty there, and people said, how did you land such a cakewalk of a job of having loyalty at Dunkin' Donuts? It's one of the most loyal brands in the world. The follow-up question to that is, what are you actually going to do? And I kind of probably brought some of that into it and said, wow, we've got an incredibly loyal base. We're going to have unprecedented enrollments. We're going to have a huge number of folks that are going to get into the program, which was true for a period of time, but we also constructed a program that was a store value card-based program, which is a limiting factor. There's a financial management component of that. Exists in the space. Starbucks does it as well as so many others. It was the right thing to do for our business, but we knew there was also some limitations to that. So when we initially launched, we sort of had this big boom of enrollments And then when that came down, as we expected it would, it came down a little bit faster and a little bit sooner than maybe we hoped it would. And so we had to start looking at, well, we know there's a financial management program, components of the program. We know that's a limiting factor. That's not enough of an insight for us. So we can look at the data, we can look at the drop-offs in the enrollment flow, we can look at it, and not surprisingly, the drop-off in the enrollment flow happens when the financial management component happens, when you have to put up a credit card, when you have to load a store valued card. That's where we lose folks. So what do we do with that information? Well, we got to a point where we said, we don't really know what to do with this. We know it's a problem, but we have to go a couple of levels deeper. So we went out to our guests. We talked to a whole series of people. We talked to guests who had completed the enrollment. We talked to guests who had dropped off on the enrollment. And we talked to guests who just straight up didn't enroll. We had a pretty good email base of folks who just wouldn't come with us for some reason. And so we talked to all three parties. It wasn't just enough to understand one group who had dropped off and say, well, why is this working for you? We went out to the full mix. Successful, non-successful, never even tried. And the insight that we get from that is that the gift card requirement of the program was a problem, but there's specifics to why it was a problem. Some folks simply just didn't have credit card information because they didn't know that's what they were going to be asked to do in the process. So they abandoned. That's a lost opportunity for us because they didn't know what they were getting into when they started the relationship. They walked away. Some came back with that information at a later date. Many probably walked away and life gets in the way. They didn't come back to us. So when we start to get into insights like that, and there were many more like it, that helps us to modify what we're doing from a targeting perspective. That helps us to modify our message, our value prop, to prepare the guests better, also to do better retargeting activities. A lot of those folks in the flow had provided us an email address and then dropped off at a later date. By going back and retargeting them with some more succinct information about how they can set up auto recharge to make it an easier go in the future and they don't have to worry about constantly reloading their card, how they could use other payment tools like digital wallets to reload their card. So all this information education that you can't cram into a paid media spot that is this big on a website somewhere, we had to get that information across to help close that gap. So when we did that, we were actually able to reduce our cost per acquisition because we would bring some folks in, but they were coming in more qualified, more educated, and if they came in and dropped off, we were going back and re-hitting them. So overall, we were able to reduce our our cost per acquisition by 6%, which is effectively the same as getting a 6% increase in budget, which is never gonna happen. So when we look at this opportunity as a financial benefit to us as the brand, by going to the guests, finding out really what is the problem. We knew the problem going into it. We knew before we launched the program, but we needed to get a little bit smarter about the nuance of the problem. And really to do that, the data wasn't gonna tell us. So we had to go to the customer.
Next point, and look at how cleverly customers set up this framework. So the overarching framework that was provided in the research is deepen the relationship. You got me, you got my money. Now deepen the relationship and think of these 3 points in the cycle where they're looking for that. Anticipatory, it's really clever. Anticipatory responses to decreasing engagement, engagement meaning any of the metrics that we all have on our various KPIs. Immediate response to negative experience, and surprise and delight and thank you. So just to give you a sense of how this was articulated, a representative quote, anticipatory. If we're not buying, check in with us. Find out what's happening. Are we having problems? Don't just look at us as a cash register, where it's just ring, 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 and all you're looking at is the money. Look at us within the journey and what you can do to be proactive. Number 2, problem resolution. 2 quotes. One of the great quotes was, if you're using all this great technology to get me to buy right now, why are you solving my problem taking days, weeks, or months? How come your great technology only works on getting my money, not on fixing the problem? Or, when there's a problem, that's when we see what you're about. Was it all talk, or are you here for us and ready to do what it takes? Thank you, or surprise and delight. And this is really important. How many folks have formal surprise and delight programs? Thank you, surprise and delight. How many have them as a formal strategy? It's amazing ROI that you can accomplish because, as this quote says, it doesn't take much. People are not asking for big gimmies or big discounts. What people are asking for is convey that you care about me or as loyal to me as I am to you. So a thank you. does huge things. So Paul's got a great example.
One of the challenges on our side, so about 2 years ago, we launched our new mobile app. It was light years ahead of what we launched back in 2012, and we were very excited about it. Great new feature sets, better design, better usability, all of the learning that we had garnered over the last several years, as well as our on-the-go ordering feature, which we thought would be just a huge unlock and a huge opportunity for our guests, especially with their on-the-go lifestyle. All of that was true, and yet when we launched, our app ratings were sub 2. The adoption wasn't as high as we wanted it to be. And we tried to say, okay, well, how do we dig ourselves out of this? Well, let's look at our feature set. Let's look at the roadmap. Let's look at the backlog of things that we didn't introduce at launch that maybe we needed to. We started drawing our own conclusions about what the guests wanted and what we needed to do to get ourselves and get them excited again. And in that process, we really didn't do anything. We weren't gaining any traction. So we had to start working on getting 2 points of information on this. One, what are the guests saying about what's going on with this current app? And then let's talk about what do they want from the next feature set. So we started going back with our call center team. We started going in and really getting down into coding the complaints and calls, not enough to say that it's just a mobile app call or enough to say that it was a loyalty call, but let's diversify that a little bit. Let's get some more insight into what's happening so that the inbound information coming in was much richer about what exactly the problems were within the app. And what the rising trends were. By taking that information, we were able to start lining that up with our feature set and say, well, our priorities are not where our guest priorities are. Their primary pain points are not the same things that we're tackling or we're thinking that are going to excite them. So, shiny new object feature number, 50 is never going to get us there, solving a very boring, rudimentary, everyday problem, especially when you have a brand where people use your app multiple times a day, let alone per week. So by getting honest with ourselves about what our guests were looking for and reprioritizing our queue for mobile app development, we were able to start ticking off the things that were really a problem for them. And for a very short period of time, we went from about a 2-star, 1.8 and change, I like to round up to 2, to 4.8. And we've been able to hold there for, close to 2 years now, 18 months. Because we were able to go back and stay honest on what the guests want. And we've continued to do that along the way. So things like menu expansion. We had folks in our team who were lactose intolerant and could only do almond milk. We didn't have almond milk in the ordering section. That was a problem. It was a much bigger problem than we understood because it was preventing folks from using our app. And we had insight within our own team, someone who literally built the app and could not use it because it didn't offer lactose. And so how do you get out of your mind, how do you get out of your own way and focus to the right things? And by continuing to go to that guest well to get that information, we stay a little bit honest and we start to deliver on what they're looking for.
A beautiful example.
This one's a funny one, so thank you. So we had a surprise and delight strategy, a formal one, which we were very proud of. We had great relationships in the sports marketing world. We're very regionalized. We also have great relations with national media, things like America's Got Talent. We had great Golden Globes relationships and red carpet sponsorships and things like that. So we decided, hey, let's give these great events and opportunities to our guests because it's very experiential. Let's get away from the transactional. All great intentions. When we'd reach out to guests and try to get them to participate in these, crickets. They wouldn't respond. We're giving you tickets and airfare to the Golden Globes. Why do you not want this? You've got tickets and VIP access to the Patriots draft party at Gillette Stadium. 2 responses out of 20 tickets. The folks in the team were excited because they ended up with the extra tickets, but not really delivering on the surprise and delight for these situations. So we had to find out what's going on. Are these not the right gifts? Do people not believe us to be red carpet sponsorships? Are we just off the mark and this is just crap that they don't believe in? What we found out by going out and actually talking to folks and asking them, hey, why did you not take advantage of this? And we reached out through more formal channels, not just through our social media networks and not just through informal calls to account holders. We went through our normal channels and through our normal email channels and asked folks to say, hey, why didn't you participate in this? They asked about it, they said, I didn't think it was real. And so we realized that we had a great offering. They were incredibly excited about it. It seemed a little too good to be true. And because of the channels and the approaches that were coming in through social media and through phone calls, they kind of thought it was a spam or a scam. So what we did is we went and we said, well, let's put a little bit of authority behind this. And we used some of our formal channels from the Dunkin' Donuts loyalty account team. We created a new inbox or a new outbox, email handle so that it had some credibility to it. So when we reach out to them, we know that they knew that it was authentic. They knew that it was really coming from us because in that gap of not understanding what the guest believed us to be. They just didn't believe these things could be true because we'd never given them in the past. And so we had to develop that, that authority or that credibility with them for them to do. And so by doing that, we were eventually able to improve 90% improvement. We were getting at best a 10% take rate on amazing opportunities. And we've been able to improve that too. We give away all the tickets every time now, which is as it should be, because these are really, really unique opportunities and really, great moments. And, why would you want to miss them? But we didn't do our job to get them there. And so we had to go to those customers and find out what to do, because we could have walked away from this just thinking, people don't like it. Data shows us the response rate's low, let's walk away. But the data doesn't always tell the whole story, and so we had to layer in some more information.
Nice. So point number 6, value added. So the emphasis in the research, value added, cross-selling and upselling. So here's the framework as you think about structuring your upselling and cross-selling program. So cross-selling, it's so smart. Don't expect me to know your entire product line. Proactively reach out, offer additional products or services, but do so based on an understanding of who we are, what we do, what our needs are. This is huge. In terms of upselling, knowledgeable and personalized add-on offers are valued. These are a customer service. That's really important. These knowledgeable offers are viewed as customer service. They're not viewed as just trying to sell us stuff. So it's the knowledge, the personalization, the relevance that takes it from pushy sales stuff into, hey, thanks so much for proactively providing value. And Paul, share the story.
And in case you haven't picked up on the theme here, you'll see data leads us to more questions than answers, and a lot of times we'll have to balance that with the voice of the customer. So here's another really fun example where we're a very weather-sensitive business. Great sunny day like today, we are going to crush iced coffees. I will be very much looking forward to the sales meeting on Monday. Last week, not so much. It was a little bit spottier coming into the sales meeting. So we're a very weather-sensitive market. People are very in tune to weather. That changes their food behaviors. That changes their physical needs to cool themselves down or heat themselves up. So we spend a lot of time kind of playing in this space for loyalty, trying to get weather-based offers to folks to drive those behaviors and to offset some of the risk that comes to our business from weather events. We were doing some weather offer testing, and around extreme weather events, we were seeing that our test cells were tanking. It just wasn't performing, and we had the transactions, but it was not profitable. It wasn't working. We weren't hitting the right margin goals with these, and so we had to go to the guests and say, well, what is happening? Like, who are these redeemers? And again, who are the redeemers? Who are the non-redeemers? And for the folks that have no interest in it, why don't you have an interest in it? And through digging through, and it was a little bit of an exploratory exercise because we didn't really quite know what we were looking for, what answer we were trying to elicit from our guests. But what we found out is our test group, those that were redeeming the offer, were actually going to be out anyways. These were plow drivers, first responders, folks that had to be out. And when they're out, we're the only thing open a lot of the time. You'll see that in the news cycle all the time. Fire department is up for 10 hours putting out something. We're the only one open until midnight or 24-hour location nearby. They're eating with us. So what we found out was that these folks were coming anyways, and by driving these traffic-based offers for weather, trying to combat the weather effect, we were actually discounting the folks that were going to come in anyways, reducing our performance, and the folks that weren't going to come were never going to come because the bad weather broke them from their routine, broke them from their habit. I'm not going to work, so I don't need to stop to get the food or the coffee. I'm not going to go out because the weather's bad and it's unsafe to drive. Nothing you can do is going to change me of that opinion. That insight is critically important because it allowed us to start to shift our approach from the offers to say, well, let's grow the basket. If we're the only thing to eat, let's try to drive sandwiches. If they're coming in for a coffee because they have to stay awake because they're plowing for 15 hours overnight, then let's add some food items to that. And that's a very satisfying and personalized experience for those guests because it recognizes that they need us and we need them, and we were able to get things to the right place. It wasn't that weather didn't work. Again, it's that we had to go a couple layers deeper, and the only way to get to that insight wasn't the data. The data just told us it didn't work. After that, you have to start to talk to the guests and find out why is it not working and what can we do to pivot that.
So it's fun because here's another weather example. We had Carhartt and the great presentation that was made relative to that. We had the Spotify example. Here's another example of where weather being such a critical part of our lives. How do you use this data wisely, relevantly for folks? So final step in the 7 steps that were identified in the research is personalized. So personalized repeat sales or renewals. So look at what the quotes are saying. And again, these are representative of thousands of hours of quotes. Don't be buy and die. Be a visible, caring brand. Then why would we go with anyone else when it's time to repurchase? So we're creating our own barriers to the repurchase, to the resale, by not continuing the love and the caring post-purchase. In terms of renewals, those that have renewals at the end of the year or at the end of whatever term, this is a great one. Companies don't get it. If they've taken care of us from the initial sale and been there throughout their relationship, then in our book, they have earned the right. That's really beautiful. They have earned the right to the contract, to the renewal. So why do we work so hard on acquisition, lose money in acquisition, and then sort of drop the ball when the love should be coming our way? So, cool example that Paul has.
Yeah, so one of the things, and this is one of my favorite ones because it wasn't as reactionary as all the other ones. This one isn't one where I failed and then later figured it out. This is one where we had the right things in place and it proved out, so my fave. Coming in and setting up the loyalty program, one of the things that was critically important to set up early on is a quarterly pulse with our guests. Consistent information that we can baseline over time and that we can also add in and continue to grow and evolve and ask questions. So by having this channel and having this avenue, we were able to get ahead of challenges as they came up. So when you have these maybe big strategic shifts in your programs, sometimes the data doesn't catch up to the guest sentiment fast enough. Or the guest sentiment follows the data. I remember in a previous life in an old program, we had done a test sell of a loyalty program, and at first the data looked amazing. It was awesome. A couple of weeks to months after that, the guest sentiment started to catch up. They didn't want this program. At first, they were still in their routine, they were still in their habits, and we hadn't lost them yet, and so it looked like everything was gravy until you get to that later stage when you realize the guest doesn't want this. And so, again, that balance is critically important. So one thing that we had done with our one of our markets is that we were shifting gears from some of our offer and promotional strategy. We were kind of shifting a little bit away from some of the loyalty-based offers to more broad-based offers. When we did that, we saw a very noticeable and tangible impact on overall guest satisfaction in that region. And by having all of our pulses set up so that we were monitoring activity by region, it might not have made a blip on the national scale, but because we were monitoring things at that level and we had planned for that, we were anticipating that possibility, we were able to see that the decisions made by that market started to drive down the overall satisfaction of the loyalty program, and a couple of different metrics that hit it. Perceptions of value, perceptions of the program overall. We were very quickly able to use that data to get with the local markets, to get with the franchisees and say, hey guys, I don't know how we feel about this strategy and this success, but here's the trade-off on that. So whatever the tactic that we've taken, here's the cost of doing that. Is this now a more complete conversation about the cost-benefit analysis? And through that conversation, we were able to prove the impact it was having on the loyalty program and then to be able to turn around their tactics. And by the next quarter's readout, we had improved them. And we know that it was only them because everybody else had continued on their trajectory, all of the other regions who had stayed on the roadmap. So it's really important to have that consistency and that baseline, not because you see these ups and downs every month or every quarter in this, but because when you make larger strategic shifts, sometimes it's going to take a little while for the data to show you what the guest is feeling. And when you can get closer to that guest perception and closer to that guest value, you can get to you can get to reacting to it a little bit quicker.
Nice. Just very quickly, I want to share with you a financial services case study. So having done the serious stuff of donuts, wanted to share with you a lighter topic, retirement planning, critical life insurance, disability. So Fortune 50 Financial Services Corporation invested a ton of money in personalization, a lot of quant work, data science work, persona stuff, and it still wasn't working. So asked us to conduct deep VOC research to understand why amongst millennials and Zs, these things that had been viewed as significant investments in personalization weren't working out. This was one of the quotes that we shared with the CEO of the company. And for those of you for whom it's relevant, it's really profound. You can market laptops, cell phones, Toyota Camrys, but this is my life that you're talking about. I am not looking to be marketed to. I'm looking for help in making my specific life decisions. So for those of you that are at this level of relevance and import in the life of your customers, this is really profound stuff. So want to share with you what came out of the customers being given a chance to identify themselves as human beings. How do you define yourself as a human being? How do you define your attitude toward retirement planning, savings, et cetera? And how do you want to be communicated with? What should communications feel like to you based on an organic, self-defined segmentation? So look what came up. Not me. I'm young, I'm healthy, I have no beneficiary. So don't tell me all the heavy stuff. This is who I am. Message to me as that human being. That tended to be 25 to 35, generally female. This was absolutely a 25 to 35 male. Some of the quotes, I am invincible. I am bulletproof. I can drink a six-pack and get on my motorcycle. I can drink a six-pack and get on the snowmobile. So I'm a stud. I don't need that stuff. That's for other folks. Well, look at the difference in messaging to that self-defined segment. Head in the sand, I'm 35, 45, 55 plus years old. I really feel guilty I haven't done for my kids or for myself, but life gets in the way. I get overwhelmed. What messaging should they be receiving? The tiniest segment of all, less than 3%, generally female, very disciplined, solid planners. So they've been doing it all their lives. What's the message appropriate to this segment? And the final one that we created called takers. Yeah, they take off the box. As part of my employment compensation, I get the 401, I get the, great, what do you do during open enrollment? Nothing. Well, then you're not taking advantage, correct. So look at the difference just through viewing these folks, letting them articulate who they are as human beings. The impact on numbers took response to a 5x increase in response, year 1, year 2, and then getting all of the technology, getting all of the human data opt-in preference segmentation going in, a 5x increase in response to a 10% response. Finally, in terms of content in a category that's viewed as colossally boring, one of the things that we asked millennials was what kind of content would engage you? We learned 18 points where engagement in retirement planning, insurance, et cetera, was problematic. Learned in the VOC, develop a hip talk show around that, and then provide people the opportunity to opt in to only those episodes they wanted, given that it's low engagement category. That created an opt-in versus a control population. These are the numbers in the opt-in population versus the control. Look at the differential in open rates of 94%, 1,000 plus increase in engagement, and the other numbers, 0 on subscribe and 100% deliverability. So in just remaining 2-3 minutes, want to switch over to some questions. Given the time limitations, we'll share with you some case studies, the PowerPoint. You can just write on the back which of the ebooks you want, which of the case studies, and just leave your card up here. Let's use this time for 2-3 minutes of Q&A that we've got remaining. Good. Who would like to start with any questions relative to the Duncan story and any of the other points? Comments, questions, personalization, please. Do we have mics? Up in front, thank you. Thanks for getting the pump prime here.
Sure. So this question is for Duncan. I was
His
curious.
friends know him as Paul.
I know. And Paul. But, just wanted to clarify where it was going. So I was really intrigued about the surprise and delight offers about, the Golden Globes and stuff. I mean, that's amazing that you were offering all that. So I had some questions about how did you send it that people thought this is not true? And maybe I missed that way. And another follow-up to that. Yeah. And then I'm curious, what were the goals of the awards? Like, why did you decide? You have all these great partners. Mm-hmm. And so why decide, hey, we're just going to give away all these tickets? I mean, that's amazing. And unfortunate that at first people didn't think it was real. Yeah,
from a communication perspective, we had folks on our team. We're calling customers directly and leaving voicemails, because a lot of times these were quick turnaround type moments or opportunities, and so they were calling directly, or oftentimes they're reaching out through private message on social, and there was just this perception that somehow this wasn't. It seemed inauthentic in some respects, that we were giving something because we never had before. Loyalty program was new. They didn't have that relationship. We didn't have that, that trust quotient yet on just giving them things. And so, we've done sweepstakes, but like you have to jump through hoops and you have to sign up and give all these things. We just never given it away. And so we just didn't have that trust. And so we had to just create a little bit more authority behind our communication than just a phone call from someone at Duncan who says they're from a team, maybe they are, maybe they're not, or PMs. And so we rounded out that communication channel to do those things as well, to make sure we still had a sense of urgency, but also supplemented that with our normal channels where they were used to hearing account information from us. And that combination worked really well. As far as the approach to events like the Golden Globes and things like that, we're like I said, we're really great at sports marketing, but we do tend to skew overly male in that effort. So when we look at how our product being used, loyalty program is like most are predominantly female, and so we had to look for other events and other reasons to engage with people beyond the Patriots or Eagles win or Giants win. Not that there isn't a large and growing contingent of female sports fans, but that can't be everything. So we felt like some of these other events, like red carpet events and things like that, sort of tapped into a little bit of a different mindset within our guests.
Nice. I think we have time for one more question. Anyone have? Okay, thank you. Hope this was helpful. If you want the PowerPoint or ebooks, just indicate and leave your card.